I think that learning and growth is a very important focus for people, and money, I think, is losing, its charm. I mean, of course, money is important, but it is not the differentiating factor anymore. I think when people join organizations, they're looking for things which is much more than, monetary. And I've seen people willing to take, when you're looking at growth and we're talking about progressions, it need not necessarily be vertical.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the People-Led Show. I'm your host, Tessin Kazi, and our guest for today is the incredible Swati Dogra. She is the HR business lead, APAC region at Amdocs, and is a seasoned HR leader with more than 15 years of experience in the field of HR. She's a passionate advocate for cultivating teamwork and positive workplace culture. She has been selected as the president of the HR Infotech Association Pune, a non-profit organization engaged in promoting HR best practices in the Indian IT sector. Welcome, Swati. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Tasin. It's my extreme pleasure to be here with you today.
So, Swati, I think one of the questions that we always ask any HR leader we speak to, and I'm really keen to know from you as well, who are you outside of work?
Okay, so Tasin, so I'm a mom of a 9-year-old girl. So there's a lot of time that I spend with her outside of work. And I am very passionate about volunteering. I volunteer for a few causes that are close to my heart. The one that I'm most passionate about is empowering youth. So I mentor a lot of children who come from underprivileged background. I'm also an executive coach. So I coach executives outside of my organization as well. And I'm associated with a few environment related causes. So with my family, we go for tree plantation drives, we organize cycling events in the city. So these are a few things that I like to spend my time on when I'm not working.
Wow, those are very very interesting and diverse things. Swati, tell us a little more about what is your role at Amdocs. So I understand that you recently moved into the role of HR business lead APAC region, and so what is it that you are doing there?
So I think it's been a long journey with Amdocs. It's been more than a decade here, and there are a few. I've moved from total rewards domain to HR business partnering to talent management to now getting into HR business lead role for a set of companies, acquired companies that Amdocs has created kept as a separate entity for the APAC region. So in this role, my part is mostly to manage the post-merger integration and to see how, we can bring onboard people of this acquired company into our ecosystem, which is very interesting work because people who work out there were working with the startup. Before we acquired them, it was a startup, and there's a certain mindset that those people have. There's this fast moving, fast paced organization culture that they've experienced. They have certain titles that they hold in that organization. There is more holistic end to end work that they do there, right? Whereas when they join an enterprise, it's a very different style of working. So I think how to manage that change becomes a very important part of it, even if we are talking about onboarding them to our, the core company practices and policies, if it is about redesigning the role architecture, onboarding them into the new titles. So it's like doing a, bypass surgery while still keeping the heart beating, right? So they don't have to feel like it's that sudden transition. So I think that's something that I do in this role.
That is great. That is interesting. Swati, want to understand, like, as an HR leader, right? What are 2, 3 employee experience dilemmas or questions that you as a people leader want answers to?
I think like any other organization, it always talent attraction and talent retention becomes, the most critical part. And it's been there for years and it continues to be one of the most important dilemmas in the minds of HR people. So when you are attracting talent for that organization, how do you pitch in for it? So how do you brand yourself in the market? To the candidates, how do you want to position yourself? That's one challenge. Then how do you retain your key people? So I think this definitely becomes an important part of employee experience. I think now it is also about the need. People are working remotely, right? So this organization in the past, there was no office spaces, they were working from home, but now they have to come to office. So to explain to them the reason why they are required, because people know they can work from home. So to be able to explain that rationale, to keep them engaged while they're in office, to make sure that you're able to engage them while they are working remotely. These are also some of the challenges of how you manage this hybrid work model.
I want to understand from you, What are the employee expectations of today at an org-wide level? What are some changing expectations that you are witnessing right now?
I think that now that we have more of Gen Z and millennials in the workforce, and there's a very different kind of, I think it's a different breed that we are experiencing. And I think they are more vocal than what I would say the previous generations were. This is a different generation, and those things that we are used to doing in the past, I think it won't work anymore. And that's why I think it's all the more important for us to listen to them, to really try and understand what will be of value to them. Because as an organization, you can spend thousands of dollars to give a certain kind of experience to your people, but if that is not of value to them, it doesn't mean anything. So I think the most important thing for us is to really reach out to them, understand what matters to them, and then make sure that how can we bring it for them.
Yeah, I think you're right. The way I think this generational change that is happening, and especially post COVID, the stark transition that we have seen in the way people work is drastically different. What do employees want from an organization when while they are working in your organization? Any such changes that you have seen?
Definitely, definitely. I think that learning and growth is a very important focus for people, and money, I think, is losing, its charm. I mean, of course, money is important, but it is not the differentiating factor anymore. I think when people join organizations, they're looking for things which is much more than, monetary. And I've seen people willing to take, when you're looking at growth and we're talking about progressions, it need not necessarily be vertical. I think the generation now is willing to do lateral moves. They're willing to have, they're to learn new skills, to not necessarily have that hierarchy in mind, but they are more open to do those horizontal moves. So the organization has to provide those many opportunities of internal moves to our people. So I think given that market reality, we are also open to people moving to new roles within 1 year, like after they've completed just 1 year. It's not 2 years anymore, and we have made our internal mobility process much more transparent. Now we are becoming, from being a role based, we are moving into a skill based organization. So we are trying to make it more visible that what are the skills that each person has, and that skill repository is there in the in our system. And when the recruitment team is hiring for a new position, they first check that are there internal candidates whose skill sets are matching those open positions. They reach out to those people just like you get a call from an external recruiter. Work life balance definitely is another important factor. Another important thing is about them, what definitely they want to be associated to, many of them want to be associated to a cause which is larger than themselves, and if they get that opportunity in the workspace, it really excites them even when they are doing their work. And it's also about leadership development now, that we have to explain to our managers that now you can't give those piecemeal work to people. You got to show them the larger picture, you got to connect the dots for them and tell them how their work will translate into that larger organizational goal. That is something that will make that's what makes their work exciting for people. And that's also something that we are grooming our leadership layer on, in terms of how to work with people. I would also add that I think it's also, we're saying we want to listen to our people, but then we also have to be prepared to listen. A lot of times, when you get into senior leadership roles, you would think that, okay, I know it all and I'm there. But now it's about the willingness of organization in terms of your senior leadership, middle management, to be willing to receive that feedback from employees and then work on it. So you want your people to be vocal, but you also have to prepare your leadership layer to be willing to listen to them when they're reaching out.
I mean, that was a power packed answer. I want to understand what are some, channels or ways or mediums that you typically use at your current organization, or you've used at a previous organization, where, you say that, okay, these are the different avenues through which I'm going to listen to my employees and understand what their expectations are. So what are those avenues that, HR leaders should look at?
So it is more of direct and indirect listening. So direct listening is more so when we are reaching out to people and asking for feedback, which happens through employee engagement surveys. It happens through roundtables that are done, with the business leaders and HR partners in it. It is done through different kind of dipstick studies that we, do with our people, pulse surveys that we engage in at different points in time. So I think these are the different ways in which we are directly listening to our people. And I think there are some indirect channels through which we are trying to gauge how our people are feeling, which is more about which is social media for sure happens to be, one of them. People go and share. People are, willing to talk about their experiences in the organization out there. So we monitor that. We also look at Glassdoor reviews. We also look at, what people are posting on the different employee rating sites which are there. So the feedback that our people are giving out there, I think that it is both the direct and indirect listening channels that we put into practice when we want to listen to our employees.
Got it. As an HR leader, what is your first? I would ask, what is your preference in terms of anonymity versus confidentiality? Which do you think works better? And I think in indirect versus direct, where have you seen the most honest feedback come out? So any views there?
We have mostly used confidential, a way of collecting survey. It is not anonymous completely because a lot of time we have to work on demographics, and for that we need that, because when we are drawing out insights, we need to understand what segment of people is, are we getting this feedback from. So it becomes important for us to have that information. So confidentiality is usually what we go with. However, sometimes we do allow that option to employees if they want to be anonymous while they're responding. We allow that feature for our employees to choose. But I think confidentiality is something that we go with.
So in terms of, I think one of the things that, HR professionals typically struggle with, and we've seen is, getting employees to respond to these surveys, right? So you are running surveys, you want them to give answers, you want to understand what their expectations are and act on it. But till they don't respond, this whole, process is moot. So from that perspective, what can how can leaders build trust and ease the survey process to boost employee participation in surveys?
So certainly you have to, the attention span of people has gone down tremendously. Now, nobody wants to sit for, half an hour and fill answers to these questions that they don't even know whether they'll be looked into or not. So I think that simplifying the survey, making it shorter, designing the questions in a way that you're able to capture more with less and in lesser amount of time. So if they see that, okay, the organization will act on it, if they see that there is, the time that they're going to spend in giving that feedback, it will definitely, somebody's going to look into it and it will be shared and acted upon. I think that building that trust is important. That's how you will be able to encourage more participation. It has to be in the beginning, perhaps you have to push it on people. You have to make sure that you're blocking their calendars and you're asking them to push it. You're following up with leaders. You're making sure that leaders are accountable for the participation level in their unit. You do a lot of, inter-unit competitions to say, oh, this unit is winning. They have a higher participation rate. So this is something that you're trying to do. So it's more of both push and pull technique that you have to apply when you are trying to solicit feedback. But I think that as you go on and in the organization, when people see that the feedback is being acted upon, I think it will build trust, and with time then people would be more willing to do it, and it will be less of push and more of pull that will happen.
Wow, that is great. Okay, so now, I think the big difference, between going from push to pull strategy, Swati, I understand, is acting on feedback. So what are some of your recommendations there?
So I think that, so when we do the feedback, after we've sought the feedback, what we do is that we start with analyzing it in terms of how much is the positive response we've got, how much is negative, what are the neutral comments coming. I must acknowledge that understanding what is working good for the organization is also equally important as understanding that what are the pain points, because you need to know that what are the things that people are appreciating, and that's something that you got to continue doing and perhaps invest a little more time in because people are appreciative of it. So you got to identify that, that which particular segment does it relate to, and then you got to start translating or start sharing that feedback with the different layers of people. So you got to start with the top management, then you got to start and I feel that eventually you have to try and go as much closer to the base employee level as you can with the outcome of that survey, because that is something that will build the trust for people to be willing to share feedback the next time. So it is also okay to acknowledge that, okay, these are the spaces where you feel, or our employees feel, that we are not good at as an organization, and we are willing to invest in it, and we are happy that you've voiced it out. So we have been able to do it. We have we do these surveys, and there are certain sections which came as needing more work from the organization. And when we did the survey after 2 years, we looked at those parameters, and there was a significant improvement in those areas. So it showed to us that if we are putting intentional effort in some direction as an organization, we do see results, and we do see people acknowledging it and it reflecting in better score in those areas after a few years than what it was in the past.
I think An important thing here is, so traditionally, organization would run annual surveys, and the time to actually act on this feedback was long. And by the time the feedback was acted upon, either employees are disengaged or they've left the organization. So do you think for the action to be in real time, as it is happening, right, with employees is important, and what role does technology have to play in this?
Definitely, definitely. So I think that continuous feedback is the need of the hour. You cannot rely on just one survey in the year. And the pace at which change is happening, like the things that you're asking for now will not be relevant 6 months down the line. Like there will be something which is very, different after 6 months that you want to talk about. So definitely you want to have mechanism where you are continuously reaching out to your people, continuously understanding how they are feeling, continuously acting on it. And definitely this can only happen through AI enabled tools. It is very difficult for, given the size of the teams and how much personal you can get as an individual. I think AI is something that you got to leverage upon in order to have more of that continuous feedback mechanism in place. So having those customized questions for the different segments of people, I think definitely people will feel that this is more relevant to them, and definitely they would want to participate and contribute. So no doubt about it. AI can play a very big role in customizing those questions and working towards the continuous feedback mechanism.
So what are those metrics as an HR leader that you look at and measure to understand, whether your employee engagement initiatives are going in the right direction or not?
So we definitely look at the employee satisfaction score, engagement score. We look at the attrition numbers. Have we been able to contain attrition? We look at internal mobility statistics. How many more people are interested, have applied for more jobs internally? How many people are moving around? We look at the burnout ratio. We look at if people are overworking, are they feeling burnt out? So those are the parameters. So we also look at how does our customer experience, how are our customer experience scores looking like, which will eventually translate. So employee experience translates into customer experience, which then translates into the productive, like the bottom line of the organization, right? So it's all interconnected. So we also look at if there's an improvement in the productivity of the organization. So I think these are some of the metrics that we use to measure it.
Got it. I think 70% of the experience for an employee maybe comes from a manager. So from that perspective, with managers being an important bridge, what are some things that you do and recommend others do as well to make managers more effective?
So yes, so we invest very heavily in our middle management layer. In the past, the organizations would focus more on senior leadership. There were a lot of programs, whether it is the training programs, or it was executive coaching that we offer to them. But now we realize that it is the manager layer which is going to make most of the difference, because they are the bridge between the leadership and the employees. And there is a lot of investment around their development, a lot of awareness sessions which are made, which is done for them. So I think the senior leadership showing how important this middle management layer is to people, making sure that the managers understand that how much senior leadership is relying on them, and to make people understand that your managers are very well equipped, they're empowered to take care of your needs. I think that is something that is done to set the expectation with the stakeholders, and there is a lot of investment in terms of grooming and developing this middle management layer so that they become capable to handle all the expectations which comes to them from different stakeholders.
Can you think of an example, or an experience, like in terms of improving this experience for middle managers? Is there anything like that you can think of right now?
There is, I think that we have tried to empower our middle management layer more in terms of, certain approval processes that we have in the organization. So let's say that if you were hiring or salary related decisions of, so we have salary ranges for every role, and we say that, okay, up to this level, a manager can decide, but beyond this level is something that his manager or a senior leader, we need their approval. But eventually we realized that we got to trust that our middle, management layer understands the implications of their decisions, and we allow allow them more decision making power, we can groom them, we can tell them what can be the impact of the decision, and therefore make them more accountable for it. But I think this is something that we have done in terms of empowering our middle management layer, allowing them more decision making power, and we have seen good outcome of it in terms of them feeling good about it, them taking the accountability of it and owning their decisions. It's not something that they have to say, oh, this came from the top and this is what we could do. That's something we've done and we've seen good outcome of it.
My last question for you is, if you would want to share one advice you could give to people leaders across India, what would it be?
I think my advice would be to, number one, to leverage on AI. And, I think that we have to, as much as, it is considered as something which is going to take away the jobs of people, but I think you have to see how you leverage on it. What is the part that can be taken care of by AI? And what is the other part that you have to better prepare yourself for? And I think that it is the human side which is becoming more important, because what AI cannot take is the human in you. And I think that as people managers, all of us have to bring that side of ours when we are working with our teams and with our people. We have to make sure that we bring that humane side, and that is, I think, what will make their experience better, that will make us effective as leaders, and that is what will make our organizations succeed.
That is great. That is some really, short, crisp and sound advice, Swati. Thank you very much. These were some great insights. I especially love the one that you shared on, the generational change for me. Thank you very much, Swati. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tasin. Thank you.